Hey guys, this is part 2 of our lecture and notes taking activity on the first political parties. We have already talked about the Federalists and Alexander Hamilton, and now we're going to be talking about Thomas Jefferson. If you did not watch the first episode, you're going to want to make sure that you go back and do your notes on Alexander Hamilton because we have already completed this side. We've gone through, we've highlighted where the information comes from. Again, if you're not sure where to get the textbook, it is on your U.S. History website. Go up to the textbook section, and it will be under Unit 3 in Chapter 11. Again, these are the exact same questions that we answered on Alexander Hamilton, but now we're going to be watching, or we're going to be filling them out in first person using Thomas Jefferson's words. I believe that. And again, you're going to find that these two men were very different in what they believed. And so we're going to start reading together 11.5, Thomas Jefferson and the Republican Party. And remember, the first thing that we're looking for is, what was his view of human nature? What did he think that people were like? So, Alexander Hamilton's success in getting his plans through Congress alarmed Thomas Jefferson and his fellow Republicans. In Jefferson's view, almost everything Hamilton did in the name of putting the United States on the path to greatness was instead a step down the road to ruin. The two men held very different views on almost everything. Personal background. Jefferson was born in Virginia to an old and respected family. One of 10 children, he was gifted with many talents. As a boy, he learned to ride, hunt, sing, dance, and play the violin. Later, he carried a violin with him in all of his travels. Jefferson was also a gifted student. When he entered college at age 16, he already knew Greek and Latin. He seemed to know something about almost everything. He once wrote that not a sprig of grass is uninteresting to me. This curiosity would remain with him all of his life. With land inherited from his father, Jefferson set himself up as a Virginia tobacco planter. Like other planters, he used slaves to work his land. Once he was established as a planter, Jefferson entered Virginia politics. As a politician, he lacked the ability to make stirring speeches. Instead, Jefferson wrote eloquently with a pen. His words in the Declaration of Independence and other writings are still read and admired today. View of human nature. And again, the heading is going to be your friend here. It's telling you that this is where this topic will be found. So, view of human nature. Jefferson's view of human nature was much more hopeful than Hamilton's. He assumed that informed citizens could make good decisions for themselves and their country. I have so much confidence in the good sense of man, Jefferson wrote, when revolution broke out in France, that I am never afraid of the issue or the outcome where reason is left free to exert her force. Jefferson had great faith in the goodness and wisdom of people who worked the soil, farmers and planters like himself. State a problem to a plowman or a farmer and a professor, he said, and the former will decide it often better than the latter. So if we look at what we've just read about Thomas Jefferson, we're going to see that his view of human nature was much more hopeful than Hamilton. Right? He believed, he assumed, he thought that informed citizens could make good decisions for themselves and their country. And that's completely different than Hamilton. Remember that Hamilton truly believed that people were mainly just out for themselves, and that was not something that Thomas Jefferson believed. And so you're going to be writing that in your own words, again, starting off with the phrase, I believe that, so because it's coming out of Thomas Jefferson's mouth. So, views on government. Republicans favored democracy over any other form of government. They had no patience with the Federalist views that the best people should rule. To Republicans, this view came dangerously close to a monarchy or rule by a king. Republicans believed that the best government was the one that governed the least. A small government with limited powers was most likely to leave the people alone to enjoy the blessings of liberty. To keep the national government small, they insisted on a strict construction or interpretation of the Constitution. The Constitution, they insisted, meant exactly what it said, no more and no less. Any addition to the powers listed in the document, such as the creation of a national bank, was unconstitutional and dangerous. Along with advocating for a weak national government, Republicans favored strong state governments. State governments, they argued, were closer to the people, and the people could control them more easily. Strong state governments could also keep the national government from growing too powerful. So, who should lead our country is our next question. That's right here. Again, Alexander Hamilton thought it was the best people. What does Thomas Jefferson say? Well, we know that he did not agree with the best people idea. Let's see, right here. Republicans believe that the best government was the one that governed the least. All right. A small government with limited powers was most likely to leave the people alone. And so he believed that that the people, democracy, should be who led our country. So the people should lead the country, right? Not the best people. He also thought that the government should be small with limited powers. All right, he thought the government should really just leave people alone. So again, you're going to be putting that information in your own words. Now, we actually just read this question right here, which is how strong should our national government be? He thought that the national government should be weak, right? So he advocated a weak national government. And the reason why he wanted a weak national government was that he thought that they should have strong state governments because the people could control them more easily. And so that's the information about how strong our national government should be. Now remember, if I'm going too quickly for you, I'm not typing here. You need to be writing. Feel free to stop the video and pause. All right, so let's go to the next page, and we're looking at what is the ideal economy. And if I remember correctly, I believe we're going to be reading about the National Bank within this next section as well. Actually, we already read about the National Bank, so we'll come back to that in just a second. So, views on the economy. Like most Americans in the 1790s, Jefferson was a country man. He believed that the nation's future lay not with Federalist bankers and merchants in big cities, but with plain Republican farmers. Those who labor in the earth, he wrote, are the chosen people of God, if ever he had a chosen people. Republicans favored an economy based on agriculture or farming. They opposed any measures, such as a national bank, designed to encourage the growth of business and manufacturing. In their view, the national bank was not only constitutional, but against farmers. While the bank was happy to loan money to business people to build factories and ships, it did not make loans to farmers to buy land. All right, and so what is the ideal economy? Well, Jefferson was the exact opposite of Hamilton in pretty much everything. Hamilton wanted a business, he wanted merchants, he wanted entrepreneurism, he wanted trade, and Jefferson said no, farming. No farming. All right, he favored an economy based on agriculture. Agriculture. He had a very idealistic view over farmers. Now, I had talked to you and said that we've already read about the National Bank, which is true. There's a little bit of information in here, and then there's a little bit of information in here about the National Bank. So our question is the establishment of a national bank constitutional? Why or why not? Now, if Hamilton thinks that it is constitutional, then you could probably guess that Jefferson does not think it's constitutional because they were pretty much polar opposites. So again, he opposed any measures, right, such as the National Bank, designed to encourage the growth of business and manufacturing. He thought that not only was the National Bank unconstitutional, it was against farmers. Now, why did he think it was unconstitutional? I'm actually going to change colors right here if I can figure out how to do it real quick. And I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to kind of go back in and take a look at this paragraph that we had just read. So, why did Jefferson think that the national bank was unconstitutional? Let's look in this paragraph again. All right. He believed that that in order to keep the national government small, that there should be a strict construction of the Constitution, which means that if the word said you could do something, then you could do it. But if it did not list it specifically in the Constitution, you couldn't do it. And nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the federal government can create a bank. And so, therefore, um, it was unconstitutional. And not only did he think it was unconstitutional, he even says that it's dangerous because they truly believed, right, that you had to listen to exactly what the Constitution said. You can't bend or stretch the Constitution, which is what Hamilton believed you could. Now, see if you remember what that was called. Think about it. What clause was that? Hopefully you came up with the elastic clause. So you're going to be putting that information together to come up with an I statement for Thomas Jefferson right here. And finally, should the United States ally or become friends with Great Britain or France? Why or why not? We just talked in the previous video about France and how they had kind of jumped off the deep end when it came to the revolution. They murdered their king and queen. They were murdering thousands and thousands of aristocrats through the guillotine. That's both men, women, and children, even little babies had their heads chopped off. And so Alexander Hamilton said, look, we should not be out, even though they were our friends during our revolution, they've gone, mad. We can't really support that. So let's see what Thomas Jefferson has to say. So views on Great Britain and France. Another topic over which Republicans and Federalists had heated arguments was the French Revolution. Most Americans favored this revolution until it turned violent and led to war. As you've read, most Federalists then turned against the new French Republic and sided with Great Britain. For this change of heart, a Republican newspaper called the Federalist British bootlickers, implying that they were weak and eager to please the British. Despite the violence of the Revolution, most Republicans continued to support France. While regretting the bloodshed, they argued that the loss of a few thousand aristocrats was a small price to pay for freedom. So, thousands of men, women, and children died, but hey, that's, sometimes you gotta crack some eggs to make an omelet, was kind of their thought. For their loyalty to France, Republicans were scorned in Federalist newspapers as man-eating, blood-drinking cannibals. Now, we're actually not going to read the rest of this section because it's not necessary for our topic for today. So, did Thomas Jefferson believe in England or France? He was very much on the side of France. The Democratic Republicans, including Alexander Hamilton, supported France. Now, why? They said, look, yeah, it sucks that they're killing everybody, but that's what you get for freedom. Eventually, though, guys, he will turn against France and say, hey, this isn't good. We shouldn't do this. All right. Now that you've read about Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, you can kind of see how they led to the first really break in the Founding Fathers. These are the first two political parties, the first two sides in government that people are going to rally around. And make sure that you get your notes filled in. And this is the end of my lecture.